Well, hello and thank you for joining me for another iTWire video with top international and Australian executives. Today I have with me Tim Lee. He's the founder and CEO of Verdictum.io. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So normally I start at the beginning and I ask you to tell us what Verdictum.io is and does, and how the idea came about, how the name came about, and obviously I also like to ask you to tell us a bit about your history in the world of tech, but let's start with the company first.
Okay, well, Verdictum.io. Verdictum is actually the Latin word for verdict.
Yep.
And verdict means that you're speaking the truth, and that's the essence of blockchain, as we'll undoubtedly talk about later.
Sure.
And with Verdictum, we're setting up a software platform for video and film producers to protect them from theft and piracy, and to look at new distribution models based around blockchain and other based technologies.
Sure, and you know that's what the company does. But what sparked the idea to do this?
Basically, a bit of history. I got involved entrepreneurially with the internet back on February the 12th, 1995 at 2:16 p.m. in the afternoon.
Wow.
Very
specific.
It was one of those moments that was very cathartic.
Burnt into your brain.
It was.
Yeah.
I mean, I lived in the UK at the time.
Mm-hmm.
On a pond, can't get away from it. Sorry
Yeah.
about that. But I went to visit a local internet provider in Brighton on the south coast, and we connected for the first time via a 14 4K modem.
Yeah.
You remember those?
Oh yeah. Well, I started with the 300 bits per second one, so
Oh my
that
goodness,
was fast.
You're way behind. You're way ahead of me. I mean, I was just looking at the Mosaic browser.
Yeah.
And we connected to a local art gallery 10 kilometres away.
Yeah, and you were watching the images
The image
slowly
came up
scroll.
one line at a time.
Yep.
And as soon as I saw that, I said, I have got to get into this business.
Yeah.
And so we set up an internet cafe bar and restaurant in the UK, and a web design house, which we sold in 2001, 6 weeks prior to the crash. Perfect timing.
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing. I mean, it was a bit of luck and a bit of judgment.
I mean, people still needed websites anyway, so it's not as if that person really would have been unfortunate. I mean, people still needed sites. Look what we are today.
The company that bought us was a graphic design house, and they wanted the technical skill underneath it. So they were happy, we were happy, and then I came out to Australia.
Yeah.
So.
And what about what else have you done in the world of tech?
Okay, well, I mean, I got involved entrepreneurially with in 2007, looking at an online commercial finance broker model. At the time of the GFC, I thought everybody's going to need finance. Nobody's going to know where to go, and we'll sort of try and set something up on that side. And we started working that. We worked on that for a couple of years and had an offline business that we were raising finance. But the GFC was a nightmare. It was far deeper than we actually thought. And I set myself a target of trying to raise money for this particular one. And then, unfortunately, I lost my father to cancer, which meant that I had to spend 3 months in the UK for his last moments. And I thought, you know what, I just need to actually get back into something that's just a bit more secure, I think, at that time.
Sure.
It just sort of affected me.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I first came up to Australia, I'd actually been involved in writing screenplays, so I'm a great film buff. And I got back into it in a big way, and had a couple of screenplays that were optioned by producers, but nothing was happening.
Yeah.
So I got a bit cheesed off with this. So some buddies and I produced some short films, and we did well in a competition. And I said, right, we're going to make this into a feature. So we made a short film into a feature film, which we crowdfunded. This is 2 years ago, and as luck would have it, we got nominated for 12 awards internationally, won 6.
Wow.
And we've got UK distribution for the film. But at the end of that whole process, the film finished up on a USB stick.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is ridiculous.
How do I protect it? Yeah.
Because if this gets in the wrong hands anywhere, I am completely not in a good position.
Yeah, stuff.
It was not going to be particularly good. And there was some film buddies of mine that spent 4 years making their independent film, a post-apocalyptic zombie thriller, and theirs became the most torrented movie for about 3 weeks. And this guy just became so vociferous. He said, "You're eating my effing breakfast." It's not a big Hollywood production. And I just thought, piracy sucks.
Yeah.
And then in August last year, I've been very much looking at Bitcoin, being aware of it.
Sure.
In August last year, I came across the blockchain and started digging deeper. And I had a feeling of deja vu back to 1995. and I just said, this is going to be how we solve piracy. And I started going deep, digging deep and wide into the whole blockchain space. And the deeper I've dug, it is just an incredible technology. Now, it's not just about the technology, it's about what problem you can actually solve.
Sure, and a lot of people say that that blockchain is the actual real invention that's of note, in addition, behind Bitcoin. I mean, there's a bunch of digital currencies already, but without blockchain, I mean, that's the thing that's really sparked people's imagination, as it has for yours.
Bitcoin was just amazing as a technology, and the underlying blockchain is phenomenal.
So how do you describe blockchain to the average person who hears the term but doesn't know what it is?
It's a really hard thing to summarize in 5 words. I mean, I was at the blockchain conference in December last year, and I actually asked delegates as we were networking, how would you describe blockchain in 5 words? And nobody could describe it in a bite-sized chunk that made me say, wow, it's that. Whereas, with the internet, Al Gore made the expression, it's the information superhighway. Everybody got it from in Main Street in inverted commas.
Yeah.
But there were answers like it's crypto 2.0, it's a distributed ledger, it's an immutable database, and it is all these things. But Joe Public doesn't understand all that stuff. And it's very much, until that comes into the mainstream consciousness, it's going to slow the adoption of blockchain overall.
So have you cracked a simple definition?
I basically summarize it as saying it's an incredibly powerful database that is immutable and distributed.
I mean, the other way of saying it is that it helps you to authenticate data. Data can be easily copied. You can have many, many copies of data, but how do you know which is the original copy? And how do you know that copy hasn't been modified? So if you've got a video, for example, of a security, someone's breaking into something, how do you know it hasn't been edited? Well, with blockchain technology, you can tell that that particular video is the original and hasn't been modified, and that would be theoretically able to be
it's the idea
proven in a court of law.
It's across, I mean, with the Bitcoin blockchain, for example, there are close to 6,000 independent computers connected, and they all have a copy of the same information. So as a result, it becomes a permanent record.
And easy to verify that this transaction really actually happened.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the power is, well, for me and for our business with Verdictum, is the power of timestamping. And the power to actually lock in data and say, that is who owns that video.
So is that how you're going to protect movies like yours and others from being pirated?
Yeah, I mean, our big, hairy, audacious goal,
yeah,
which every tech startup has to have, and we're no different. Our big, hairy, audacious goal is to remove film piracy by 80%. We'll never get to 100%. That would be a naive pipe dream. Yeah. Because the hardcore pirates are always going to...
Well, they'll just film the screen. Film a screen and it'll be low quality copy.
We've been in discussions with cinema distributors, looking at independent cinemas, for example, and trying to sort of see how can we overcome that issue as well. And that's sort of built into the wish list. It's going to be technically very challenging, but it's into the wish list. Yeah. But I mean, ultimately, the 20% hardcore, the studios and all those sorts of guys can throw their legal resources at those guys. We're looking at a management platform for film, for the film studios ultimately. But one of the major problems that we're trying to address right now is the issue of what is known as freebooting, which is something that's not that major an issue in terms of people being aware about, but it's a major issue in social media. And what happens with freebooting is that people download a video from YouTube, they strip all the producer content relating to who owns that video and who's produced it, and then they put it up on Facebook as if it's their own, with the idea that they draw the audience, the viral audience from Facebook, rather than discoverability from YouTube. Sure. So the issue is that the film producer gets no advertising revenue from that whatsoever.
And Facebook actually gets it.
Facebook gets it, plus the actual the group, the Facebook group or the Facebook page. They use it as a means of getting into their sales funnel. Sure. So that they sell products at the back end. Yeah. Now there was a report to show how bad this problem is. There was a report that came out last year that showed in the previous 30 days of this particular report, out of the top 1,000 videos that were performing on Facebook, 725 were stolen from YouTube, with a loss of 17 billion views. Now, the horrible thing is that once you've seen a video, unless it's really good, you're not going to watch it a second time.
I mean, maybe if you're 2 years old, you'll watch it on repeat.
No,
but most people watching are not.
No, absolutely. And so the issue is that once those videos have been viewed, the content, the revenue earning opportunities have gone.
Yeah.
So as a result, the video producers are grateful about this problem, and Facebook have said that they are doing things about it.
Well, they'll take it down a few days later, which is too late.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a video that you let me know about, which I watched beforehand, that explains this whole problem, and I'll put this into the story. People can see for themselves. But it's like it's bolting, it's closing the barn door after the horse is bolted.
And that's the issue. And it's not just Facebook. I mean, if you're on Instagram, on Twitter, on Vine, and on other websites, for example, people are just stealing content.
So how will your technology stop that from happening?
Well, the way that we're addressing that is that we're identifying the ownership of who actually owns the video. We're actually identifying and hashing that ownership into the blockchain.
And there's some sort of a watermark as well?
There's a watermark that will be linked into that hash, but thrown in with some secret sauce.
Yep.
Which actually means that if a video is actually downloaded from YouTube and stripped, the watermarking will still be there.
Sure.
I've got to be careful how much I say, because we're going through a patent application right now.
Sure.
So I've got to be careful exactly how much I say, but there's some secret sauce that we're working on.
Sure, but will this technology prevent Facebook from then displaying it, or will it force Facebook to somehow allocate the earnings to the original content owner, or is it part of
the idea is that we're creating a content ID engine that can pick up the watermarks.
Yeah.
And it's the idea that we want to be platform agnostic, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We don't care. It's about looking after the video content producers.
Yeah. I mean, I know that with YouTube, if I upload something and there's some audio that the event that I was at played, which is music that is well known, I'll get a notification saying, well, you can't monetize this content. Any view is going to go to the content owner, and nothing I can do about that. And in fact, I'm quite happy because, well, I mean, what can I do? I can mute that bit, but I don't want to.
I mean, certainly, and that is another area that we're addressing within the technical roadmap.
Yeah.
That, for example, there is an element in blockchain called smart contracts, which can enable the automatic transference of money.
Yeah.
And what we want to do is to look at the idea that if there is a music content owner that a video producer is actually linking into, we want to enable a contract such that when money comes in from YouTube, it automatically gets dispersed appropriately. Because at the moment, there are a lot of video producers that are particularly concerned about this particular issue, where maybe there might be 10 seconds of music, but as you quite rightly highlighted, all the advertising revenue goes to the music. And
apparently, if you only use 8 seconds, that's fair use. And
that's right. If it's less than 8 seconds, or less than 6 seconds, I forget exactly. There is an element below. It's either 6 or 8 seconds that you can use. Anything more, then you'll actually get charged. And there's a great video online of a video producer who is American. He's sort of saying, it's like me going to buy a hamburger. Coming home, you knocking on the door with some tomato sauce and saying, here, have some of my tomato sauce, now I'm having a hamburger. Yeah. And he uses that analogy. And we want to basically clean up the whole video space. We want to make it much more professional.
So will Verdictum be like the database of record that everyone will use to authenticate all of this?
That's our big wide vision. Yeah. We want to be the platform that enables this to happen. And when we look at the idea of virtual reality, which is another whole topic in its own right, you've got all the major brands that are putting out their headsets right now, and there's no content or no decent content. So that's just going to get shared around. Sure. So we're working with VR producers as well.
And of course, you're in this exciting startup phase where you're looking for investors, but you've also got programmers beavering away to make it all happen.
Yeah, we've got our first niche product that launches I'd rather say 6 weeks.
Yep.
We hope 4, but I'd rather say 6 just to give me a bit of wiggle room, because we know what it's like in IT.
High pressure.
Absolutely, especially if I'm committing to it on with iTWire right now. We're launching a niche product geared towards the protection of film scripts.
Sure. And you can when it launches, you can tell me what it's all about then, and we can expose it in.
I'd love to expose it more on that time.
Sure. So, you've explained a bit about yourself and what your goals are, and I mean I've got a whole stack of questions here, which sort of go into various different areas about blockchain and what you think the next chapter in its story is. Where do you think it will create the most disruption? What would you like to say?
I mean, blockchain, because of its association with Bitcoin, is going to decimate the financial services and banking in particular.
I mean, unless banks try and ban it, which some banks are trying to do, but it's sort of beyond them. It's gone beyond them.
I mean, the banks have tried to put a bit of a smokescreen up, in my view, over sort of AML and KYC, anti-money laundering and know your customer, in terms of closing some bank accounts for Bitcoin-based businesses last year.
Sure.
Now, I mean, the blockchain is not going away.
No, blockchain is separate. I mean, it's part of Bitcoin, but it's separate to it.
But it's going to disrupt the banking sector specifically.
I mean, everything's being disrupted, and so it's just the world we live in.
But there's a really good report that I'd reference your viewers and listeners to actually look at by Banco Santander, which was in July 2015, I think it was, where they indicated that between $20 and $22 billion worth of infrastructure costs will be wiped away through the blockchain.
Yeah.
And certainly you've got examples of the ASX investing in a New York-based organisation, Digital Assets, to reduce the number of days from share trading from 3 days down to same-day trading.
Mm-hmm.
And the opportunities that creates and liquidity that puts into the market is going to be phenomenal. So I think financial services are going to be very disrupted. I think the thing that I'm actually really quite pleased about, I think it's really going to help the developed world, to be honest. There are a number of methodologies that are enabling, for example, money to be transferred via mobile phone networks, but linking into actually the Bitcoin blockchain and others that are decimating costs of international transfer. And so it's going to be major disruptive. But I think the area of provenance overall is going to be the big non-fintech area, and that's the area of speciality that we're focusing on in terms of being able to identify and timestamping events and material. And that, for example, I mean, we're looking at the protection of videos, but that could be extended to supply chain for organic food, it could be for counterfeit goods. A whole variety of use cases are being developed worldwide, and provenance I see as being a major area that's going to come through over the next 12 to 18 months.
So what you want to do with blockchain is to disrupt illegal activity?
Essentially, yes. I mean, I just got so
annoyed
with piracy, and I just think it's just unethical. I mean, okay, maybe that's a bit of an old-fashioned attitude, I don't know, but it's just a lack of professionalism. I just think it needs to be sorted. And this technology and a bit of clever ideas and a bit of secret sauce and putting everything together, I believe that we can sort it.
And one of the things that you mentioned to me in some of the material I looked at before we started our interview is something called the $100 million DAO hub. The
DAO.
What is that?
Right, the DAO. Yeah, this is leading edge stuff. This is the decentralized autonomous organization, and this.
It sounds like it's disrupting organizations.
Well, it is. It's disrupting governance.
Yeah.
In terms of this has actually been set up as a quasi venture fund, even though it's not a true venture fund. It's been set up in such a way that instead of there being an exco or a committee that's actually looking and saying, right, you guys do this, go out and bring the deals, we'll make a decision. It's about the crowd making a better decision. And what they are doing is allocating funds for projects that themselves are decentralized autonomous organizations, and I'll describe what it is in a second, with the idea that funds are made available, people who have actually bought the DAO tokens, the cryptocurrency tokens, actually vote on whether that project should be backed.
And is your project eligible for this?
We are currently looking at it.
Yeah.
Because we have to, I mean, it's more about autonomous organizations. I mean, there is an organization called Slockit, which is a classic example of a decentralized organization. I'll just summarize that really quickly and then come back to what we said.
Sure.
It's basically where a lock itself receives and pays out money by itself, nobody involved. All right, and that's a decentralized that's a decentralized application, and in principle the DAO is going to invest in similar types of structures, or they'll make money available, and they will then get a percentage of the sales that those organizations make. Now, it looks like a venture fund, it smells like a venture fund, but it's not regulated like a venture fund.
Sure.
And the issue is, this is the biggest crowdfunding campaign that there has ever been. It actually peaked, because it's all based around Bitcoin, it actually peaked, it was based around Ethereum, sorry. It actually peaked at $162 million in 31 days on the basis of a 29-page white paper. Okay?
Yep.
And it's the biggest crowdfunding campaign that nobody's ever heard of.
Yep.
I mean, unless you're in this sort of the IT space, so I'm sure a lot of your viewers will have actually seen it. But I mean, in my personal view, I don't think this is going to work, that first one. I think iteration 2 or iteration 3 are going to be amazing. They will actually enable the governance of organizations to be around computer code that will actually bring people together, rather than there being a governing board that determines how things are going to be. This will be a really interesting space to watch. Yeah.
And so, I mean, ultimately, I know that in the technology news space, you know, there are all these websites that are scraping content, and they're doing the same thing to YouTube videos. They take your content, stick it into something else, put Google ads around it, and steal your advertising revenue. So, I mean, you're also wanting to use blockchain to monetize content for the content producers.
Yes.
I mean, that's really what you're trying to do.
I mean, essentially what we're trying to do is trying to protect the revenues of video producers.
Well,
having produced a load of videos myself and films, I know how much work goes into it. And
theoretically, it could be for any sort of content. Not
it
just
could be,
videos.
could be, in theory, it could be for any content. I mean, we're focusing on the video content because that's an area that needs to be sorted. I mean, the film industry overall annually loses $8.2 billion a year through piracy, and the entertainment business worldwide is $654 billion. It's a massive industry, and it's a massive problem.
So you're 6 weeks away from the first,
yes,
in theory, or from your first
yes,
your niche application.
Niche application.
So what's the vision for the next year or two, and then where do you think separately to your company, Verdictum.io? How do you think the whole industry with blockchain will look like in a decade? But let's start with your next steps.
Well, our next steps, we're working on the watermarking. We've got a proof of concept to show how it works.
Yep.
We're looking, once we get investors on board, and we're talking to a number who have been positive. The great thing is, I'm funding the business myself so far, so we don't necessarily need investors, but I'd rather have investors with good strategic relationships or good partnerships on board, because that'll help the long-term business. So what we're looking towards doing is really aggressively building that tech, rolling out practical products that are solving problems, rather than just creating technology for technology's sake that's not solving problems. We want to solve problems, and we want to develop technology that solves problems. Yeah,
well, you'll get customers that way.
Well, that's right. That's exactly right. And I mean, customers are the be all and end all.
The lifeblood of any business.
Precisely right. Yeah. So it's very much that we're looking towards developing the watermarking technology, looking at the content ID engine, so that we can actually get that to all the video platforms.
Yeah.
But we know there's going to be a lot of lobbying of the actual video platforms.
Well, the content creators, the streaming companies, Hollywood.
The content creators want this like it's going out of fashion.
Yeah.
We know that just from the heated conversations we've had with a number of people. I mean, in a positive way, not a negative way.
I mean, heated in it's just like
it's
a burning issue.
It's an emotional issue.
Yeah.
You know, because it is taking people.
Well, when I see people rip my stories and headlines off, I get annoyed. But it must be small beer compared to the Hollywood producers that make millions.
But it's the same idea. It's the same idea. You know, it's very hard when you're creative and you put all that effort in, and then you find somebody else has ripped it off. It's not going to happen.
Well, and clearly that's why you believe that there's.
Oh, it's come from a much deeper space. It's not just we're going to make it squilly dogs. I mean, obviously that if we sort that problem out. Yeah, that's not going to be an issue.
That's a natural consequence.
But that's not the goal. The goal is to solve the problem. Yeah. And if we focus on that problem and just get this stuff out there, then we're
well, you will have solved a major issue for the modern era, modern world. Yeah. So, as we get to towards the end of the interview, I always like to ask a question which is sort of just turning 180 degrees, and that's simply to ask you to please share the best piece of advice that you've ever received to help you get where you are today.
The best piece of advice I ever had was from a mentor. This would be at least 20 years ago. Might even be a bit more than that. I'll say 20 years. then I can pretend I had it when I was 6. But it was from an old fellow who'd been in business for many, many years.
Yeah, a wise owl.
A wise owl.
Grey beard or whatever they call it.
Yeah, a lot of grey area at the time. And he said to me, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And it's so true related to the blockchain.
Yeah.
Right? Because blockchain there's a lot of BS that's spoken about it. There's a lot of crap that's flying around.
Yeah.
And it's a very deep and it's a very wide technology. And it takes an inordinate amount of time to really get underneath it and just work out where the use cases are. I mean, every morning I go for a walk and I always listen to a podcast or a vodcast.
Sure.
Because it's just constantly changing. But there's no point in knowing all this information unless there's a customer at the end that you can say, look, I'm going to look after your needs.
Here's a practical application that can solve this problem, as you said.
Absolutely. Yeah. So nobody cares how much you know, they only know how much you care.
I've heard that one before and it's a very good one.
I think
I'm very glad you shared it.
It's stayed with me for many, many years.
Yeah. So, do you have any final messages for iTWire viewers and readers and for your current and future customers and investors?
Well, I would say for any of the iTWire guys, get out there and understand more about the blockchain. It is a phenomenal source of opportunity. It's a phenomenal source of threat. If you do nothing, you will be disrupted. I mean, Goldman Sachs came out with a quote in January this year where they said the blockchain has the power to change everything, and it's absolutely true. So I'd say that's number one. And I mean, for ourselves, we're actively looking towards protecting content owners from theft and piracy, and we're very keen to talk to anybody that might be interested in being a beta tester or actually sort of sharing with us some of the problems that they're experiencing, because we can't hope to be an arbiter of everything, but we really want to show how much we can.
Yeah, and I always like to think of the comedic element of things. Just the thought came to my mind that if you want to learn about blockchain, you need to really learn how to become a blockhead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually...
It's probably a really bad one.
Well, I mean, one of the things that we're doing, because it's exactly what you've said. I mean, the blockchain is it's a very deep and a very wide subject, and we've just launched a meetup group, for example, that is actually under the branding of Beans, Breaking and Blockchain. And it's the idea of keeping blockchain really straightforward in terms of what are the business applications, and actually interviewing people internationally at breakfast time, because the time zones for us here suck, let's be honest. But to get hold of people out of California or out of the UK, we've got to do it at breakfast time. Yeah. So we've launched a meetup just to get this sort of thing happening.
The breakfast blockchain briefing.
Well, it's Beans, Breaking and Blockchain to try and keep it. It's to try and keep it really light, and it won't be heavy tech, but it's about understanding the people, the issues that they're facing, the adoption of blockchain, because blockchain is here to stay, and it's an area that's bubbling under the surface that everybody who's involved in the tech space needs to understand. If they're not across it right now, get across it.
Tim, I wish you the best of luck with
Thank you, Alex.
Verdictum, and I hope to talk to you again in the future.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks to all your listeners.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.